Hello, everyone. This is another installment of Chocolate Chat brought to you by the Persistent Rumor. I am Chocolate Yoda, spelled Yodddah, because film studios are litigious, and I don't want to be sued, although it would be funny if I was sued, because you can't get blood from a stone. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. With me this evening, I'm so excited. We have two continents, three time zones, three lovely ladies and myself. I think I had a dream like this when I was 14 years old. But let's go around. I guess it doesn't matter the order, but I'll just look at my screen. Janelle, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep. Hi. I'm currently in Brisbane in Australia. I live right in the city. I've been coaching since 2005. And currently I'm a trainer and an assessor. So I teach people how to be trainers. I do coaching on the side, so I'm running some groups on the side. I'm really passionate about assisting women in particular, but I really love, I guess some of the most extraordinary results I've had in coaching has actually been with men. So I have a really keen interest in how those relationships roll out. And I'm really looking forward to being part of this group.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. We'll round out the Aussie corner. Karen, go ahead.
Oi, 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 Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. So I'm Karen Lyons, Australian. I live in the Whitsundays, which is mid-north Queensland, very tropical, very balmy. I'm a coach. Janelle and I are actually friends. I've been coaching for some time, counselling before then. I have a very colourful past, done lots of different things in entertainment and people-based industries. So I'm very good at actually reading people, always have been. That was a natural thing for me. So it was natural to gravitate towards coaching. And also, like Janelle, I tend to lean more towards helping women. It's really resonating with me at this point in time. And one of the main reasons that Chocolate Yoda and I connect on this is talking about the differences, the polarities in men and women and relationships, because they're so vast. And there's a lot of areas that we don't openly talk about. We still don't openly talk about through fear of judgment, lack of acceptance, all of that. So it's wonderful that we have this forum where we can openly and authentically just chat with each other. And if anyone else gets benefit from that, well, that's absolutely sensational.
Excellent. My new buddy Laura from Chicago, fire away.
Sure, in the middle of a snowstorm and COVID. Woo-hoo.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I am Laura Rice. I am a former university administrator and arts administrator currently, and the host and creator and producer of Full Body Frequency, which is a radio show and podcast specifically for plus size women and those who love us. We focus on art and culture, travel, love, beauty, and fashion, health, and wellness. So there we go. And we do a little bit again on love.
Yeah, nice.
I love that. As a voluptuous woman, I love that.
Yeah. My problem is that I don't have a type. I seem to love all women, but I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with the fact that my type actually changes. You know, I've gone from being athletic to curvaceous to voluptuous, but I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and my problem is I have no incentive to lose weight because women seem to like me at any weight, and so I blame you guys for being fat right now. I've actually never talked about myself on this podcast before. When I'm not being Chocolate Yoda, I'm a keynote speaker, seminar leader, coach, and consultant. I've been in sales since, oh my God, 1984. So this year will make 37 years that I've been in sales and doing public speaking for about 32 years. And that's it. I at this point, I'm since COVID started, I've kind of reconstituted my coaching a lot. And one day I hope to make money from it. But in the meantime, I'm having fun doing podcasts. So that's me. So this evening really was Karen's idea. She and I had done a podcast, a 2-hour long podcast where we just because I thought to myself, when I decided to do chocolate chats, it was an offshoot of my main podcast, The Persistent Rumor, which I do with my best buddy, and I thought, I'll just sort of talk about the things that I talk about in coaching, my philosophies about life, my philosophies about relationships, and then I did what was, I guess, somewhat of a controversial topic, which was violent men and the women who love them. And it was a genuine exploration of the subject. It wasn't meant to be sensationalized, but I knew that people would have powerful reactions to it. At least I assumed that, and I was right. And so, in wanting to get that out, I contacted Karen and said, hey, take a look at this, share it with your friends. And she did. And that video has actually gotten the most views of any video that I've put out so far. And, I thought, we need to expand this conversation. And at first I was going to put it all on Karen's shoulders and be like, okay, you represent all women. I'm going to talk to you. And she said, hey, how about we have a few women on? And so this is the result of all that. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon must inevitably come to pass, right? So here we are. That's my favorite quote ever, so I squeeze it in whenever I have a chance. So I wrote down 10 questions. We don't necessarily need to get to all 10. I just wanted to, kind of spark the conversation and see where it leads, and get your perspectives on these things, because as Karen alluded to, I think from my years of coaching and just in speaking to women, I've been around women a lot more than the average guy, just based on feedback that I've gotten over the years. In high school, in my last year of high school, I sat at lunch. I actually had 3 lunch periods in high school. I don't know why. It was actually 2 in a study period, but I never did the study period. So that was when I sat with a group of about 6 or 7 women, young women. We were 18 years old, and I got to get their perspective of things. Of course, this is the perspective of 18-year-old girls, but I found as the years have gone on that that actually wound up helping me a lot in informing my ability to understand women, because there's a lot of guys running around still that find women mysterious, and I think that's lazy, but I understand it. You guys, that whole men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing, I think holds a lot of water. Like, we really do have 2 languages. We have different ways of processing things. And I'm using the word different. Nobody panic, because it doesn't mean better or worse. It just really does mean different. And I'm shocked that that's controversial now, that people debate the idea of men and women being different, but they clearly are. So let me start off with my first question, which is, it's based on a Diana Ross song. And it was since she's an international superstar, so I'm hoping that you've heard this song. But if you haven't, there's a line in it where she says, "Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware that you're cheating, but no one makes me feel like you do." It's a song Upside Down. So, ladies, we're going to start off with an easy question. Have you ever been
of an easy question?
Yeah. Have you ever been cheated on but stayed with him because no one made you feel like he did?
Good question.
Thank you.
Mm.
Who wants to start?
I can start by saying that I haven't, fortunately, that I'm aware of, I've not been cheated on. But I have thought about that quite a lot because I have actually been a cheater. So just on
Mm.
the other foot at one stage. And I think that if I was to be cheated on now, I'd, instead of just throwing him out on his ass, I would consider why that happened in the first place. And I'd have to consider what role I played in that. Like, what was I not doing, or what was I not giving and fulfilling his needs? Did I drop the ball somewhere for that to happen, or is he just a cheater? I think
Mm.
you need to get to the core reason of why somebody's cheating before you jump to conclusions.
Interesting. Okay, who's next?
I'll go next.
All right.
So there was a guy that I dated, a little bit older than I was. And I did not know he was cheating at the time, but he was. And it turns out that I was the one he was cheating with.
Ah,
So once I found that out, I let it go. I was ghost. I was done. Unfortunately, found out that not only was he cheating with me, he actually had another girlfriend in addition to me, and in addition to his wife. So I was called by the girlfriend after I'd left the situation. And she was lamenting about how she needed to stay, how this was the love of her life. And I was thinking, really? Why? What is he offering either one of us, or offered either one of us, that was worth staying? I just couldn't figure out the answer, but apparently she was addicted to love, if you will.
interesting. So how
And
did what was the indication that she was addicted to love?
Well, she just said, "Oh, he attended my graduation. He helped me through graduate school." She actually was going to enroll in another graduate program, and his wife was part of that admissions process. She actually booked an appointment with his wife to see what she was like. So it was just like she went down a rabbit hole and she couldn't pull herself out,
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is insane. And stop following me on social media, get away from me. He's yours, have at it. So
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very toxic behavior, isn't it? Like just with no judgment, I'm just making a statement, just off the bat, that's really toxic behavior. And
oh,
when you were talking, the other thing I thought of was purely in this day and age, you think that you discovered that you were a plaything, really, amongst many playthings. And so you start thinking about sexual disease and transmission and all of that. Like this guy, it's like an octopus on acid, man. There's all these different arms that are just,
Right.
mhm,
you know,
mhm.
connotations of that.
Right.
Um,
So now,
yeah.
with that, removing the that aspect of it, I mean, of course, that is an aspect, but
Mhm.
um, just more focused on the emotional side of it. Like, what is your take on that?
The
Me,
emotional stuff.
Yeah, yeah, Karen.
Oh, okay.
as in the original question, or sexual disease?
No, no, I want to remove sexual disease. That's a bummer of a
I'm just looking
conversation
for clarity. I'm
because
just looking for clarity here.
if I do a quick scan of my questions, I'm pretty sure that all of them could lead to sexual disease. So,
Just got to have clarity. Um, so I have been cheated on, and I was really, I think I was more surprised than anything. Not
Mm,
egotistically, I just felt that we were pretty solid. Like, well, we weren't pretty solid. I felt that we were solid and in a good place. So I was just completely flabbergasted from the perspective of, interestingly enough, I believe at the time, because I was young, so I believe that my first process is, what did I do wrong? Isn't that a
mm,
classic? What was
Mhm.
it that I didn't give? What didn't I fulfill? But my attitude towards that now is, I personally have grown exponentially in the sexual arena over the years and tried lots of different types of relationships. And I would be far less judgmental. And my thoughts are very similar to Janelle's. I I would actually want to be in a relationship that was united and faithful. But if there was a reason why one party couldn't be for whatever reason, then if you can have an emotionally intelligent conversation about that, set boundaries, work out what you can do, I'd be far more open to that these days than ever sort of doing the behind closed doors, sliding in dark alleys, so I'm actually quite open to having that conversation, but it'd have to be special personal circumstances for that.
Sure.
And I'd also want to know, I don't want to chunk down and find out, why did the person cheat? Was it just a primal thing, or was there something far more substantial behind that?
Right. That's very interesting. So, do you think that the willingness to be open to the conversation is sort of a function of experience? Because I find that there seems to be a little bit of a difference when this conversation is had by women, let's say under 40, as opposed to over. Do you think that plays a role?
I personally do. I think that a lot of younger women now, the women that I've come in contact with, are far more sexually aware and far more open to doing a lot more things than I was at that same age. So I think they're ahead of the game in that regard. But emotionally, I actually feel like they're more crippled than I was at that age. And yes, I look at women over, I'll say 45, because I still know women who are 38 to 40 who still look like they have a lot of growth in that arena. They're very reactionary, or they've classically only been with one or two people, nothing wrong with that, but they don't have this wealth of experience to draw on when it comes to emotional intelligence in a relationship.
Right.
So I would say over 45, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, this is always a very challenging area, and I what I try to do when these kinds of things come up is kind of deconstruct the differences between men and women on this, because I think the knee-jerk reaction to a man cheating on a woman is usually all about how there's something wrong with him, and you might have heard this from women. I certainly have, where, and it's not necessarily in the realm of cheating, but it's sort of when a relationship goes wrong and he leaves, the reaction is, I don't understand. I cooked, I cleaned, I took care of the children, I took care of the house. You and I actually talked about this in our podcast, Karen. And, every time a woman says that to me, my question is, did you ever ask him if any of that was important to him? It's important to you, right? That list of things is what you think is what your role is or whatever, but did you ever ask him if that was important to him? And that's, I like Janelle's answer a lot, because I think it's very rare for anyone, man or woman, to be able to step back and ask, what role did I play in this? That's I think that kind of spans almost every situation in life, but certainly something as emotionally charged as being cheated on. I've never had that experience. I kind of figured out after the fact that a woman that I was with probably had cheated on me, but I never had like a real time kind of thing, and I never had a confrontation with her about it. So I can't say that I have experience in this area, but I've heard enough people talk about it to where I've seen what that, how emotionally charged it is, and how it's like, what was wrong with him? Why did he do it? So has anyone ever endeavored to figure out what the male side of cheating is? Like, why do guys cheat? And you all kind of hinted at it, which I thought was pretty fascinating, but anybody on that?
I don't know that any one person can fulfill all of your needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I've looked at a lot of relationships of married folks, and I'm not married. I've been proposed to twice, turned down both proposals.
All right.
Because
I might bring that to 3 before the night's over. We'll see.
But one of the things that I know that people need to do is they need to have conversations about the what ifs, down the line. What if this changes? What if I'm interested in someone else? What does that mean for our relationship in terms of a marriage? And I know that people have all sorts of agreements in their relationships that are nobody else's business. For example, I was on my college alma mater's chat room, and someone was saying how they could not understand, or they were really disappointed in Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because they found out that he had cheated on his wife.
Right.
And this is 50, what would he have been, 92? So he died at 38. Was it 38 or something like that? Very young.
It was 39, yeah.
38, 39, yeah. So the reality is this man's been gone over 50 years. And the reality is that his wife is gone as well. And that neither one of their lives, well, his life might have impacted your life and the quality of your life as a US citizen. However, what he did and what she did within the marriage and outside their marriage is nobody's business.
Yeah.
Nobody's business. Most people don't even know that Coretta Scott King remarried after Dr. King was killed.
Right.
So the reality is conversations inside a relationship, conversations outside a relationship, conversations around a relationship. And that's between those two people and whoever else they decide to bring in or keep out of that relationship.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that someone would be like, forget about the fact that he changed the course of American history. He cheated on his wife. That's what we really need to focus on. But I think the idea of presenting hypotheticals, from my perspective, probably, even though it probably would be an interesting conversation, I don't think that would have much impact 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road if something happened. Cause I had this one woman I dated only a month and a half, because I just couldn't stand all the hypotheticals she threw at me all the time. That, and she was a little bit of a crazy person, but one of the things that annoyed me was all the hypotheticals she was always throwing at me, and it was always about marriage. What about this? What about that? And I remember asking her, "Why is marriage so important to you?" But whatever. But I think that I think it's sort of a function of maturity. To be able to accept the idea that one person can't fulfill all of your needs, because society kind of portrays it as the opposite of that, right? You find your soulmate, you find your, it just so happens that your soulmate is, 3 cubicles down from you at the office, like so many times, but I think something like 30 or 40% of all marriages come from the workplace. So, yeah, you and your soulmate just happen to apply to the same job. How coincidental. But it's I remember watching a film where a woman was asked a hypothetical. If you quote unquote caught your husband watching pornography, would that upset you? And her answer was yes. And then the follow-up question was why? And she said, because I should be enough for him. And when it got to that part, I paused it and I asked the woman, well, what do you think about that? And she's like, well, she's right. One person should be enough. And I said, you're in for a lot of disappointment.
Can I say pornography is a really, can be such a taboo. My personal experience is it can be such a taboo topic with women, and quite a heated topic. Women that are seriously opposed to it, it's like, the devil's horns are out and there is no open discussion about that. It is just black and white.
Interesting. Janelle, I saw you nodding, Janelle, during what Karen was saying. What's your thoughts on that?
I think if pornography is fulfilling the needs of your intimacy and connection, and there's an addiction to it, that's one thing that's probably not great. But I don't really see a problem with pornography otherwise. Like, I think I'm a bit open-minded about that. Like, it can actually be used to enhance your relationship, and
Yeah.
you can have a lot of fun with it together. And if he goes and does that on the side a little bit, you know what, if I can't keep up with his needs, then I'm kind of okay with that. But if it was, that's replacing me, and what I can give, then I think that's where it becomes a problem. I think
Sure.
there's a fine line of balance there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that pornography can actually, ironically, save relationships. And part of the reason I believe that is because I actually know a sex worker, and she has that perspective. She says, I'm basically providing a public service. There's a man out there who is not getting what he wants. And here's the thing about cheating that I want women to understand. And again, this came up when Karen and I did our podcast. A man who cheats is not a man who wants to blow up his life. He doesn't want to hurt his wife or significant other. He doesn't want to end the relationship. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. No, what he wants to do is not have to try to pressure the woman he's with to give him what either she's unwilling or unable to give him, but still have that satisfied outside the home. And he sneaks around doing it because, again, he doesn't want to hurt the feelings of the woman he's with. And some women have a hard time accepting that idea, but it really is like sometimes it's really an example of a guy who really loves his significant other so much that he just doesn't want to leave her at all. But he's like, well, I just got to have this one itch scratched and then I'm okay. Because, this sex worker tells me, this guy comes around like once a month. Other than that, he pays his bills, he takes care of his children, he takes care of his wife, and they're happy home and everything is good. And the wife doesn't know. And so everything seems to be okay. And I don't, again, I've never been in this situation, so I don't know. But does that make sense? Does that resonate with any one of you in terms of like, this is not necessarily a person looking to bring down the system?
Absolutely.
I agree. And I think you have to factor in too that when people meet, there's all like love and juiciness, and you want to shag each other every 5 minutes. And she's putting her best face forward. And over time, that dwindles and life changes. You might have
Right.
kids, your body shape changes, how you feel about yourself as a woman changes, your priorities change. You start wearing tracky pants and thongs, and not the kind of thongs that look sexy. We're talking about beat thongs, like flip flops, and let yourself go. And then they sit there and wonder why their husband's gone off and cheated. So I think there's two sides to this, where the woman needs to take some responsibility and look at, well, did I cause him to stray because I stopped putting out and I stopped making every day exciting? Did I let go of the part that I when you start a relationship and it's a certain way, the hope is that you want to try and maintain that, because that's what you fell in love with. So we as women, I think, also need to factor in that there is or could possibly be a responsibility from us letting him go in letting ourselves go, if that makes sense.
But I
Mm.
think it works on both sides.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think men do the same thing. I mean,
I
there are
agree.
dad bods, there's this, there's that, and the other. People stop paying attention to one another, attending to each other's needs. So I don't think it's a matter of a woman and her body shifting and changing. Not just that, but I think it takes two. And I think women nowadays are just as likely to stray from the relationship as men. Women have things that are unfulfilled. Again, I don't think your one partner can be your end all in a relationship. And I think it's really incumbent upon both people to talk about it.
I agree.
Yeah.
before somebody walks the other way. Because sometimes even if you cheat, and if it's once a month and you're paying your bills and your wife doesn't know and you don't want to hurt her, the reality is what's done in the dark comes to light. And somebody eventually is going to get hurt.
That's
So
true.
it really is a matter of communication and conversation before it becomes a sneaky thing that erodes all the trust in the relationship.
Well,
Totally
some
agree.
people never get caught. You know, there were times when there were times. No, really, think about it. There were times when a dude will die, and suddenly two wives and two sets of families show up to the funeral. So that guy did a great job of covering his tracks.
I'm gonna tell you this. I bet you both women knew, because at some point I
Okay,
knew.
that's okay. That's I know that's a popular through line, but you know, I don't know if that's necessarily true in each case, but it's possible.
I know
My
of a guy.
ex-husband used to say that his experience was that more women had ever cheated than men. And there's a part of me that actually thinks that those statistics are probably true. They're
Mhm.
just smoother about it. And I don't know, they're just more subtle. It's not this in your face, like, yeah, baby, want to throw you against the wall. Everybody, every man and their dog can see the energy. I think women just go about it in a sneakier, if you like, fashion, to be honest. And I also just wanted to add that I feel, just like women, I feel that there are men who, and you can correct me on this one if you feel that that's not accurate, FJ. I feel that there are men that would also cheat to want to feel their masculine and primal side again if they happen to be in a marriage where the energy dynamics have shifted and maybe the woman's becoming quite dominant, or she's sort of leading the household because maybe he works away a lot. So when he comes home, he feels less than. He doesn't feel like his role is there anymore. So he's not feeling his usual fabulously horny masculine self. And so he's not getting that from her. He's not being appreciated. He's not feeling the love in different ways. He's not feeling appreciated. So
Yeah.
he may start to look elsewhere because of that scenario.
I think that's half true. I don't believe it's a question of not feeling masculine, but every man that I've ever spoken to that has left a relationship, because I want to point out that statistically, at least in America, 68% of the divorce filings come from women.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting to me. But in the other 32%, what I get from men is that they feel taken for granted.
Okay.
It's possible that their manliness has been affected, but I've never heard a guy say that. Even guys that I'm very close to. And I mean myself, that was part of what eroded several relationships is when I was taken for granted.
That's actually probably a better way of describing it. So yes,
Yeah,
thank you. Taken for
yeah,
granted. And for me personally, men in my past that have said, I just don't really feel appreciated.
yeah,
And
yeah,
in a nutshell.
yeah.
And
Which, yeah, I think that's the same thing. Yeah.
and then
Um,
asking, what is it that you need? What makes you feel appreciated? So,
right.
and then having that dialogue.
Yeah. And I love that question because when I watch couples, um, I I can always get a sense of where there's trouble. And one indicator for me is when the woman is ridiculing the man publicly.
Mhm.
Mm,
That is something that I remember, I've told almost every woman that I've been with that I will not have a sitcom relationship.
Mhm.
Meaning, because that seems to be the structure of almost every sitcom around a married couple, right? It's that the guy's a buffoon and the woman just, ridicules him all the time. And I said, yeah, I don't do that. To me, that's a signal that the woman is too comfortable in that relationship and is in fact taking the man for granted, and the fuse has already been lit and it's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. and it's not necessarily that the relationship is going to end, but someone's going to be cheating. And to all of your points, I've always believed that men and women cheated equally, always. Because my thing was, well, yeah, okay, men are cheating, but who are they cheating with?
Oh, well, see, now that's a good point, because the betrayal, in my view as a woman, if you want to call it a betrayal, changes if, say, the guy cheats with your best friend.
Oh yeah, well that's a guy who's a little bit out of control.
But I'm just saying that, like, not even making a judgment there. I'm simply saying that dynamic shifts the state of the question again too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm very willing to judge a guy that does that because I think he's being purposefully hurtful. Like that's. Right. I mean, I get it. Here's the thing that I like to default to. And let me preface it by saying this. There's obviously no way that I, as a man, can understand what childbirth is like. Not that I can't understand it. I can't know what it's like, right? Like I watched my son come into the world, and in high school we watched films in biology class, so I can understand what childbirth is, but there's no way I can know about it. And conversely, women cannot know what the male libido is like. Supposedly Socrates or Plato said that the male libido is like being chained to a madman, right? Which is a great quote. And
is it accurate?
Yes, it absolutely is accurate. And and thank you. The fact that you had to ask that is proof of my point. There's no way that you can know what that's like. Yeah, there really isn't. Like, so that guy that cheats on his wife with her best friend is an example of that. A guy that is just out of control. Doesn't make him a terrible person, but it's just more evidence. Like, look, let's be realistic about this. Very often when there's someone standing at a podium apologizing for sexual indiscretion, it's a dude. It's not a woman, because like you said, it's a little bit different for women than it is for men in this area.
Well, I beg to differ. There are examples of women who have actually cheated on their husbands with their students. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10 or 11 times or 10 times out of 11, that woman is going to jail. So she's presented in front of the public, apologizing for her.
I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying it rarely happens. It's most of the time it's a guy that's doing stuff like that, and here's what's, again, this is something that people have a hard time accepting, but that woman doesn't deserve to go to jail for having sex with a student, with a male student. Nah. That, I can tell you that dude has stories for a lifetime, and he's happy about this.
He may be happy, but the problem is the depending on the age, that's one, and then the parents. Parents play a big role.
I get it. I think that a lot of the laws, I can only speak for America. A lot of the laws here are childish when it revolves around sex and sexuality. I mean, look at what happened when Janet Jackson's nipple popped out for 2 seconds during the Super Bowl. And they were like, this is a family show. I'm like, oh, the huge guys like trying to murder each other is a family program. But and here's the weird thing about America. We obviously love breasts. They're everywhere. They're on billboards, they're on magazines, they're in television, they're in films. We love breasts, but apparently Americans are terrified of nipples.
Oh, absolutely.
What's that about?
We're just immature, just like you said. We just don't.
That's not a really foreign thing to women, because people have been jumping up and down and carrying on about women breastfeeding in public for ages.
Absolutely.
Like it's completely natural.
Right.
You know, 9 out of 10 times you're not going to see the woman's breast. It's just whatever you're hoping to catch a glimpse of. You know? And I just go, I cannot believe that there's such a song and dance that someone can't breastfeed in public. It's offensive. So,
Yes.
you know, again, the octopus
no,
arms
but
going everywhere with this conversation.
Right. No, but it really does speak to childishness when, like, you know, if people want to make a bifurcation between something salacious, potentially with a naked breast, and breastfeeding, I guess you could make that argument. But really, like, when I think about other mammals, like, you know, they're having sex in public, you know, they are breastfeeding in public, you know, so why is this, why are we as mammals so freaked out by that? I mean, I know the answer. It's really religion that kind of makes people freak out about all things sexual. I mean, when you look at the Bible in Genesis, one of the things, I mean, it's the first story of the Bible, and it's like, let's make sure we hammer home that nudity is shameful, you know, and also that women are evil, which of course I agree with. You all are very evil, but, you know, it wasn't my idea. It's in the Bible. Don't blame me for this.
Terrible.
I think there's probably a little bit of an arrogance too, that as mammals we think that we're at the top of the food chain. So there's that as well.
Yeah, we're only the top of the food chain because we've learned how to kill everything. But like literally a squirrel can run faster than I can. So like, what am I bragging about? You know?
And I think there's probably a lot of lack of respect for the substance that is produced by a woman through her breast, because we drink cow's milk. Well, some of us drink cow's milk. So we're the only mammals that drink another mammal's milk, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And we're the only mammal that does it after infancy.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of a weird thing. But yeah. Well, all right. That was question 1. All right, let's see what else I've got here. Okay. We covered, can your significant other love you and still want to have sex with other women? I think we're good on that. Oh, okay. So now we're going to get personal. I guess the question is, presuming that perhaps all of us have sabotaged relationships at one point or another. So the question is, how have you sabotaged past relationships or a past relationship, if in fact you've done that?
Well, I've got to think about this one for a while.
I'll tell you, I cut and run. I'm done. I'm out of there.
You cut and run?
I cut and run.
So you got an itchy trigger finger?
I do. And the reality is, if I see something that I don't like, there's a trigger that hits and I'm just like, okay, this is not going to work out. I don't have the energy to make it work. It shouldn't be this hard, or this person shouldn't annoy me like that. They're pushing a button or trigger. So I'm just out. I'm just like, I'm gone. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I see certain things.
Oh, it does.
Okay.
It does. So let me ask a follow-up question. I'm going to lean in very close. Laura, who hurt you?
Well, I'm a child of divorce. So that can explain a lot.
Sure.
You know, in terms of.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, that could explain all of it. You know, if for children, divorce is as traumatic as war is to a soldier. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, your world explodes in front of you. Everything changes. Absolutely. You know, and of course, the way parents handle divorce is sometimes disastrous. Mm-hmm. Can be, you know, and they take a bad situation and make it worse. You know, I cannot tell you how many times men take divorce as an excuse to leave the family rather than just leave their wives.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen women decide that they're going to use the children to hurt the man, not realizing that they're hurting the children.
Mhm. Mhm.
So now your itchy trigger finger makes perfect sense.
However, what I've done since then, I've done a little bit of therapy, and I also know that the litmus test for me is if I can't introduce him to my family, I don't need to be dating him. Like
Right.
just very cut and dry
Mm,
with that. So
gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Anybody else?
Yeah, I sabotaged my marriage. There was significant differences between us. I'm very tactile and loving, and I think because we got married young, the older I got, the more the differences actually became the difference between us.
Mm,
And I ended up cheating and having an affair because I felt completely lonely and desolate. And I remember having thoughts that, how can I feel so lonely when I've got somebody sleeping next to me every night? I would rather just be alone if that's the
mhm.
case. And that was probably the trigger for me to go and have an affair, because and I didn't look for that. That just actually came into my face, and the opportunity was there, and in a moment I felt more love and connection than I had in a very long time. So I was a starving island. I think the way I sabotage it is I never said what was happening for me. I thought I
mm,
did with my little stupid subtleties, in my little moods or whatever, but I
yeah,
never said out loud, if we don't fix this, I'm leaving, or somebody else is interested in me, you need to pay me some attention. um,
right, right,
and so that was 18 years ago. I haven't
right.
really had I mean, I've had one or two significant relationships since then, but for the most part, been single, because I don't want to ever hurt anyone like that again.
Sure.
Because I know that I did. And I also don't want to hurt myself. That was a major, major blow to my own self, my own moral compass, and I realized
Mm,
how my human needs for love and affection um, overpowered my values and what I know is right and wrong. So it's been a very long journey in making sure that that doesn't happen again.
gotcha, gotcha. Well, I have two things to say about that. Number one, I want to pat myself on the back for hearing you say that something came into your face and not making a joke about that. That's good. I cannot describe to you how much restraint that actually took. Uh, but secondly, here's now. So my follow up question to that is, uh, did you sneak around while you were cheating, or did you let him know that you were cheating?
I totally snuck around because I was so ashamed of what I was doing, on one hand, but my soul, my body was being fed on the other hand. And
Mm-hmm.
when I left, I left with, because this person kind of unlocked a key and a gateway for me and showed me how I could feel love and affection. Like, I've never actually felt anything like that before. And I left knowing that I'm going to spend my life, if I have to, pursuing that type of depth and connection with somebody, and I will spend my life pursuing that. And I
Interesting.
won't settle until I have that. And so I left knowing that I'd never actually be with that person, but I knew that what I wanted wasn't here.
Gotcha.
And that was made absolutely evident. And it was never going to be there either. I knew that.
Right, right. And the
Yeah.
other thing that I made note of while you were speaking, was that bit about not directly communicating with your significant other about what your needs were. So obviously you can't saw the sawdust, and we'll never know for sure. But do you think that would have changed things if you had done that?
I think it would have prolonged the outcome. I think we would have ended up separating in the end anyway,
Okay.
because we were so different.
Yeah.
I think it would have just prolonged it. It might have fixed it for a little while, but at the end of the day, like, he's been with somebody for nearly 18 years. Like 2 months after I moved out of the house, he moved in with he met somebody, and he's been with her ever since. And even though they live in the same suburb, they still don't live together. Like he's okay with a lack of affection, a lack of connection, a lack of intimacy, and or having it at a certain level. And I would never be okay with that. I would never have been okay with that. I would have, dwindled and melted away into a ball and faded into obscurity.
Well, that's interesting. It's interesting to assume that what he's doing is a lack of affection. It could just be a lack of proximity. I mean, maybe that's the part that he wasn't comfortable with, was the proximity of it. But that is very interesting. But what I want all women to take from what you said is hints don't work. we actually cannot read your minds, and I know you keep wanting us to, but it doesn't work that way.
No,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah, just on that, I've made it a pursuit, and one of the things that I spend time coaching women on is actually finding their voice, so they can avoid the kind of pain that I went through as a result of not speaking up. And then that's just one circumstance where I never used my voice. So now I'm probably more outspoken than I care to be, but I also don't care. It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, Karen, you've had enough time to think. Did you come up with anything?
Oh, darling, I've got a list. I've got a list. My challenge was, sort of deciphering the list and sorting the wheat from the chaff. Let's see. I think I've had a pattern of various self-sabotage from the time I was young, because I'm a child of an abusive household. So one of the things that I used to do from the time I was young was control whatever that belief system was as a tiny kid, control the circumstances around me, whatever I was doing, because at least I could do that when the household was in an absolute tiz. So when things would start to go pear-shaped, or I'd notice things would start to change in the dynamic of a relationship, my first trigger, my go-to would be to try and start to control things. So of course, clearly that went down so well. So and what's interesting is, clearly it didn't go down well with the partner, but it also didn't resonate well with me, even when I was doing it. Like, I could feel this internal abrasion going on, if that makes sense. But in my mind, I was thinking, because clearly it was established since I was a tiny child, in my mind, I was thinking, this is the only way I can protect myself. This is the only way I can find a way through this and out the other side. So, not a lot of joy and love and happiness came from trying to control situations or another person. Clearly one can't. Then what would happen for me is, like, it's taken a lot of clearly work on myself to realize the process. Then what happened to me is I would then fall into people pleasing because the control issue wasn't working. So I would literally go to the other extreme and go, right, I need to do all these things to please this person and da 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 da. And it just happened that the last major relationship I had, listening to Janelle, we have a lot of similarities in the sense that, we were really drawn together. We did fill each other's voids, that classic sort of, yin and yang, but we were also miles apart, kilometers apart in other areas. Our love languages were so different. I'm very tactile, very touchy. His love languages were acts of service. Even though I knew that and he knew mine, the longer we were together, the greater the divide. I found myself sabotaging in different ways to find a way out. Then for me, I had so lost myself, like steam from a kettle. Oof, it was just, I kind of turned around one day and went, where's the sexy, sassy, sensational woman from X many years ago? So then I just decided I was just going to plod along and let it run its course. And, clearly that went well until finally a decision had to be made, because, making no decision is a choice. But in fairness to myself at the time and to him, we were both so depleted that I don't think either one of us was actually in a position to make a choice. We were just in survival mode. We were literally surviving, and
Yeah.
we just had each other. So
Yeah.
occasionally we would lean, but a lot of the time we were apart. So I
Interesting.
totally see where old patterns played out, and even before then. So yeah, I can safely say that occasionally there might still be a little tweak. I'll see something, but I see it so early now and go, oh no, that's just so
Wow.
not how I operate. That's
Wow.
not who I am.
Very, very interesting. You know, that idea of not deciding not to decide,
Oh, exactly.
is something that was covered in a song by Rush when they said, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice." Right?
Exactly.
And yeah, it's interesting. So, in hindsight, what could you or would you have done differently?
In hindsight, interestingly enough, he would always say to me, this is a classic, talk about owning, not hearing somebody. He would often say to me, just accept me the way I am, or just accept, like be in that and accept. And I think, just accept, like, what the hell? And it was, yes, it was very layered and very deep. And there are a lot of examples I could give, but because of honoring him and respecting that and privacy, I'm not going to mention those things. So it wasn't just as simple as always saying accept, but I get where he was coming from. I don't think I had judgment, but I think I did. I do feel, I have to own, I had an underlying expectation of what I just thought should happen or that he should do. Should, could,
Mm,
would, all of that. These days, that would never happen. I mean, it doesn't. When I've been in relationships with people, it's just something comes up, to sit down. Okay, like when this happens, this brings this up in me. Can we talk about this? Can we go about it differently?
right.
Now it's a whole different level of emotional intelligent conversation. But
Sure.
then, yeah, no, not so much. So acceptance, yes. I don't think there was a great deal more that I could do, because I think it was inevitable, FJ, that like Janelle, I might have been able to elongate it, but it would have inevitably run its course.
Right.
The differences were too great. And he is, I don't know if he's a rare example, but he was, in my experience with men. I am quite a physical, sensual, sexual creature. And I ended up marrying somebody who wasn't. So
Yeah.
my sexual desire was much greater than his. So he always felt that his exact words to me were, I feel pressured by you. We did have a conversation once about, or a couple of times, about, going elsewhere to be satisfied, but primarily he was a younger person than myself with very old school values and morals, and that just wasn't acceptable to him at all.
Right. Right.
So yeah, go Janelle.
I was told that I was sexually aggressive because I was the one who was trying to initiate connection and intimacy. So when you get told that, it's like, okay, well, I'm not even going to try anymore. And so that also then contributed to the lack of intimacy.
Yeah, I had
Man.
4 years of, I can't say I had 4 years of celibacy, because I think there might have been a quickie in there somewhere, but I had pretty much 4 years of celibacy within a 16-year marriage. And then there were periods, not as long as 4 years, but within the marriage. So physical connection, that was something that was so important to me, because it wasn't just physical, it was a deeper connection to me, was just disintegrating at the speed of light. So it was a complete role
Mm,
reversal.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. I'm still a little distracted by the fact that someone told Janelle she was too sexually aggressive. That's a guy that I would never hang out with.
I know, right? You just want to.
Yeah, I do. I want to sometimes. Guys can be so disappointing sometimes, but
If
um,
if I my hand on my partner's leg when he was driving the car. Like, I think everybody's done that at some point.
Yeah.
Someone's driving a car, someone puts their hand over and puts their hand on the leg. I mean, I stopped doing that years into the marriage because he would get agitated. And I initially thought, was it because it's interfering with your concentration, you're driving, you're this, you're that. And he said, no, it just feels like you're already applying pressure to me before we've even gotten home.
Ooh, yikes! Yeah,
Ouch.
yeah. I can't even. Oh, I've,
Okay.
I've had so many actual sex acts while I was driving. I can't imagine what that's about.
So,
I got told once to move out of the way of the TV. I had sexy like little lingerie number on, and I'm doing the little dance. Admittedly, he was watching the Green Bay Packers play, and he is an avid Packer supporter.
Ah,
But I got
yeah,
told to move out of the way, and I
yeah.
never did that again. I
Yeah,
never put the sexy lingerie on, did my thing ever again, and that was in my first year of marriage. So it
yeah.
was already set up for disaster because I'd stopped trying as well.
Well, I'm no psychologist, so I'm probably not qualified to make this assessment of this guy that you're talking about. But I believe in psychology the word is gay. He might he might have actually been gay. Wow,
Fun.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well,
But he loves Green Bay more than me.
yeah, I think there's got to be, for me anyway, there's got to be common ground on all levels when you're in a relationship. I don't want a mini me. I'm not looking for someone exactly like me, but I'm also not looking for anyone to complete me. I'm quite complete, and so I'm looking for someone who just fits in with me, who vibes with me. Everything is cool, and it's not just sexual. It's got to be social. Um, I really believe that conflict resolution has to be similar as well. If you're a screamer and she's a talker, or vice versa, that's going to be a problem. So I'm kind of in Laura's camp. I have a quick trigger finger. I don't believe that relationships are all about work. I don't mind putting effort into letting the woman I'm with know that I appreciate her, to make sure that she's satisfied sexually, to make sure that she's satisfied intellectually, all that good stuff. I mean, that's the gig, right? That's what you sign up for in a relationship. But like, to me, once someone says, "Oh, let's go to couples therapy," I'm like, yeah, this is probably done,
Really?
because now it's going to be about working on the relationship rather than the relationship. And again, I've never been in that situation, so I don't know. I might very well be willing to do it, but I can't think of like any success story that I've ever heard that starts with my significant other and I are in couples therapy. And I'm sure there's therapists watching this and freaking out that I just said that, but I just my personal experience, I've never heard that end well, But I don't know. Am I wrong? Has anyone had success with that or heard about success with that?
no, as you were saying that, I was thinking about different couples that I'd known, and I thought, well, some of them have healed past rifts to a certain extent, but as they move forward, there's the but. As they move forward, there's still things that are spiraling up. You can see it. So either it's a long-term thing that they need to stay in counseling while they work out those triggers. But I feel that most people leave prematurely. They kind of go, yeah, hey, we've got it, we've done it, we've sorted that out, awesome. And really, yeah, as I said, it's just premature.
Right.
I'm with Laura. In the beginning, when I was younger, I would exit a relationship early on, which I think was just I had a lack of empathy. I really had a lack of compassion and empathy. I was just like, done, I'm gone. It was quite clean cut to me. But yeah, as I got older, and interestingly enough, with the previous relationship I was talking about, he was a very deep thinking person, which I really loved. But somewhere along the line, he'd convinced me that I was a person that lacked commitment. And that seed was planted and it kept getting fertilized. And so when we were coming towards the end, and I knew that things were, what's that classic? A woman, or not just a woman, a lot of people, but mainly women, stay in a relationship 2 to 4 years longer than they should have, and it's over. And I kept going back to, oh my God, I must have this really amazing lack of commitment. So that was the other thing. I was committing come hell or high water to prove that I would hold that commitment to him and the marriage.
Yeah, I think he gaslighted you. You might have gotten gaslighted.
Oh, well,
or he used reverse psychology or something. I know this chick is going to run. I got to convince her to stay.
I think you're right. But I think in fairness, we probably gaslighted each other on quite a few things. So it wasn't one-sided, but these are just the things I see with enormous clarity now.
Right.
I would like to believe anyway that I would never fall into those traps now. Now I kind of go, what the?
Yeah. I find it interesting that when I think about some of my past relationships, I compare them to hostage situations, and sometimes someone will ask me, who was the hostage and who was the hostage taker, and I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Once Stockholm syndrome sets in, it doesn't really matter anymore. I am quick to end a relationship if I know absolutely that the compatibility that I need is not there. I don't want to waste anybody's time, least of all mine.
Right.
And it is in stark contrast to how I was as a young man, where I stayed in terrible situations just because I hated being alone. And now I'm done jumping through hoops. I'm well aware that I'm auditioning for you, but I want you to be aware that you are auditioning for me also. And if, I might pass the audition and you might not. And, I'd like to say vice versa, but that's ridiculous. I'll always pass the audition.
Just the look on Laura's face, I really want to hear what's going on in the mind with that one.
I mean, realistically, he's going towards his third ex-wife every time I read one of his Facebook
But that just proves how romantic I am.
That just proves that you may not be ready for prime time.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, sure. No, that's a running joke. I just think that's funny when I'm like, yeah, I've been divorced twice, but I'm a real romantic. I'm always on the lookout for my third ex-wife, right? But yeah, it really, that joke kind of crystallizes what my stage of life is now, in that it's like, I get look, here's the truth about me. I fall in love every 15 minutes. I love women. Even the ones I don't like. I love women and I love female energy. As I said, as a young man, I spent a lot of time around women. I have very, very, very fulfilling relationships with female friends, one of whom I actually never had sex with. She is my unicorn. She's the only female friend I have that I never had sex with. And even my second ex-wife is one of my best friends, so I do have those connections, but I also realize that statistically speaking, most people are not going to be a fit for one another. And so I'm just realistic about that going in. But at the same time, literally every new woman that I am in a relationship, I believe I'm going to stay with for the rest of my life. And so far I've been proven wrong a few times. That's all it is,
Let's talk about this. Let's unpack it.
Sure. Go ahead. Take a shot.
That's okay.
All right.
Next question, please.
I'll pay you extra.
Podcast. That's the next podcast,
All
Laura.
right, the next
Right.
podcast.
Yes,
Then
definitely.
we'll interview him.
We'll call it "What's the Deal with Chocolate Yoda?" So all right. So my next question is, who taught you about relationships?
Wow.
Mm.
Hmm.
So for me, the first honest response is I taught myself,
Mm-hmm.
but we learn by example. And so the example that was set for me was a very broken alcoholic relationship with my father and an exceptionally strong mother who was born in a period where there was no assistance or help. So she always had to pull herself up by her bootlaces, dust herself off and make the most of it. My maternal grandmother was this completely colourful character that held court in life. And she had quite a happy second marriage, but unfortunately, I only had the stories to go by. I had no recollection. He died when I was about 4, so I had no recollection. Then there were my paternal grandparents, who I adored my paternal grandfather, but he died from stomach cancer when I was about 10 or 11, and I did not have a good relationship with my paternal grandmother. So, and then there was my older brother, who was at a stage where clearly his primal or his young male hormones were kicking in, and he was just having a grandiose old time. So I go back to, I learnt from watching my parents and then having to work out what was okay, what was acceptable, what wasn't. Mm-hmm. And here's an interesting story, because sometimes I would go to my girlfriend's house to sleep the night, who lived a couple of streets away. And she had the classic mum, dad, sister, happy family unit. Parents seemed to be quite united, happy. It was all really foreign to me. And he came in one day, he was a muso, and he came in one day and said to me, "There you are, Dimples." He always called me Dimples. He said, "There you are, Dimples," and gave me this huge hug, and I just pushed him back. And right in that moment, the dynamic of my relationship with her dad changed. He never physically came near me ever again. And I thought I'd done something empowering and strong to protect myself. I had no roadmap to say that this is a really loving man, father, husband, who's bringing me into the nest and actually enjoys my company and is just being gorgeous and warm. Mm-hmm. So it was really sad to me that that dynamic was never the same, and including with his wife and my girlfriend's mother, it was never the same. So God only knows what happened behind the scenes with that conversation. But I did learn from it, because as I grew, as I aged, I realized that that was probably the first real example of a happy, solid relationship that I'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. So then I set about trying to find out what that relationship was. Good question. So I decided to become quite sexually active, because clearly you must, what's that saying for women? Women play at sex to find love, men play at love to find sex. So I thought, oh, well, this is how you do it. This is how you find it. And of course, then I fell pregnant when I was 15. So that's my semi-succinct answer.
All right. How about you, Janelle?
I would say that my parents taught me about relationships, but if that was the case, I'd be all kinds of fucked up right now. And actually, that was the case. I think my parents taught me what not to do, because my upbringing was very similar to Karen's in the way that I grew up with domestic violence. My parents got divorced when I was young. used to hide under the bed. I was terrified when they used to fight. And
Wow.
there was alcoholism, there was gambling, there was cheating, there's all kinds of stuff. So I grew up really kind of not having good role models in what good relationships look like. And like Karen, I also had very similar experiences. I would go to my girlfriend's place where my friends were still married, their parents were married, and I would just be in awe because it's like, this is what it looks like to be normal. So I would always compare my upbringing, my family situation to my friends. And I think probably the biggest lesson for me was actually in my own marriage and then leaving my own marriage. And I sacrificed my marriage for myself and my own sanity and for my future relationships. I sacrificed that one so I could fix everything. So after my 10-year marriage, I was in my 30s. I went on a full self-discovery and only then really decided how I wanted to relate from now on, because I screwed it up. So in my mind at the time, I screwed it up so monumentally, and I didn't have great references for good relationships. So I just went on the mission to figure it out for myself, and I invested a lot of time, money into deciding how it was going to be so I can put it into practice in the future. Where I'm still at, it's a work in progress.
Interesting.
Agreed.
Interesting. All right.
Agreed.
All right, Laura, you're up.
So the weird thing is that my parents were the only folks in my family that had divorced. Wasn't
Mm,
heard of. People just didn't do it. People stayed together. I look back at my maternal grandparents and I look at their marriage. It's kind of a model, but as a kid, you don't really know what's happening in grown folks' relationships. I knew that they respected each other. I knew that because my grandmother had rheumatoid arthritis and was bedridden at some point, that my grandfather took on roles that weren't traditionally done by men. He was retired. He was a dentist. They had escaped Mississippi, and I literally say escaped Mississippi in 1957. My grandfather was on the national board of the NAACP during Brown v. Board during
oh, wow.
a lot of the civil rights movement, and he had federal protection from President Eisenhower. And when that stopped, my family had to get out of Dodge. So they moved, they literally relocated to Chicago overnight.
Wow.
It was a crazy time. Of course, I wasn't born then, but I look at just knowing the history, looking at a partnership, a very kind of a partnership that wasn't, I don't think it was highly unusual, because there's so many people that had to cling to one another, had to cling to family. It was a very dangerous time. But after hearing the stories and being with my grandparents and knowing that my parents' divorce was not something that was looked upon as being acceptable, and I looked at my cousins and their parents were still together, and I looked at all the relationships and I thought, well, really, I want someone who I could travel with, who's a partner. I know that as far as traditional roles, I don't think I want that, where the women are in the kitchen cooking for every holiday, family holiday. The men are in the den watching TV. Laura's in the middle protesting all of this and just, not watching what I want to watch on TV, but I'm also not cleaning and cooking as well.
Right.
So, and I was the only granddaughter, the only daughter, sort of thing, that it was a weird dynamic. But one of the things that I learned, again, watching people, is that people determine the course of their own relationships over the years. That's what I've learned, and that whatever it is that I want or I think I need, I have to speak up about it. I have the right to determine what it is that I want. And this may sound a little crazy, but the Huxtables on TV, I really idealized them because I thought, well, that's my family, except when my parents were divorced. Those are my grandparents who are not divorced, but my grandmother has, rheumatoid arthritis. She can't get around like the Huxtable grandparents, but ideally, that's exactly what we are in terms of, if you play the game, which it's called Negro Geography. So the game where you know, this person, what school do they go to? What did their grandparents do? Da 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 da. It's like the whole social thing. I don't play that, but in a sense, if you're looking at the kind of construction of a relationship that I wanted at one point, I had to play that game. Now I'm kind of like, you know, as long as he meets a certain criteria, he's warm, he's loving, he's affectionate, he practices good food hygiene, good physical hygiene.
That's kind of important.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, I dated a dude who just threw the chicken in the pan, didn't wash it, no vinegar, no water, no lemon, no nothing. He seasoned it, but I'm just like, I'm not eating that, you know? And so he actually had the nerve to argue with me about salmonella. But there's some very specific things that I want now that I'm older. And I look at these relationships, and again, I always say, what happens in a relationship is between those two people. So I will never know what the relationships between my grandparents were like, or my aunts and uncles were like. I'll just never know. But I have an idea of what I want. It's, you know, respect and love, kindness is important. I can't date someone who's just not kind to other people. That's just not going to work.
Oh yeah, that's so true. And I think that, you know, especially listening to all of you, like, it's pretty awesome to share. I feel that the area that we're all united is that we've all based our now relationships on pretty much the learnings of what we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's been really clear to us. So we've been able to see exactly what we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So we can then move forward after the work that we've done on ourselves and knowing ourselves. That's a huge one. Like, so many women, I feel like I'm just speaking for women now, not men. I'm just so many women that I see professionally, that I talk to, they do not know themselves. They do not know themselves, let alone what they truly want, other than the Disney fantasy that you know, we're fed. So you know, that's really important. But I feel like we've all been empowered by what it is that we've seen and been exposed to show us the direction that we don't want to go, which is enabled us to be very clear on where we do want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a simple thing, but I know harmony, like listening to you, FJ, talking about, you know, having fun and those things in a relationship, those things are all very important to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Fun, spontaneity, love, absolutely,
Right.
kindness, definitely. But harmony, like the minute that there's disharmony in the household or the relationship, it's like they're the moments that I actually would do a Laura or do a chocolate Yoda and go, I'm out. Like, harmony is important to me. Do not scream at me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Totally
So-
agree with you. I recently stopped dating somebody because the way he argued, where we were a week in, and he yelled at me.
That's
when we
conflict
argued.
resolution, right? You
Yeah,
gotta
and
have
I was like,
conflict
wow.
resolution.
Exactly. I'm like, that's how you argue? I'm out. And
Yeah.
because when you get to a certain age in your 50s, and you should be, my model of the world, you should be a bit more accountable for how you operate in that world. And if you're going to get to that age and you're still yelling and telling people to fuck off when you fight, yeah. And when you're a weekend, yeah, no, I tap out. So going back to what Laura said earlier about just, you know, I'm like, weed them out quickly, sort and delete quickly. So if I get a little whiff of that nowadays, I'm like, no, I'm not going to put the energy into training you how to be a good human if you're not that already.
Yeah, and the older, I believe that the older people get, the chances of that even being possible, of like, really, I'm going to fix you? You're in your 50s? Are you kidding me? I'm not taking that on at all.
No.
Yeah.
No,
If you
definitely.
don't know
That's
how
why
to
we
act.
should date younger people.
Has anybody, I just have a quick question. Has anybody ever argued with someone that you were in a relationship and you've seen red? Like literally, like you've just, the red has just come. I can't explain it. It happened to me once and I knew I immediately left that relationship. Just that person made me so angry.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I felt like I was so out of control. Like
Yeah.
yeah. That
Yeah,
was scary to me. That was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
scary.
that
I
happened.
have had that happen. And I think for men, it's really, really important that you get a hold of that quickly. You
Mhm.
know, I, to me, the guys that hit women, I can't abide that, right? So I never wanted to be one of those guys.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't think I've ever left a relationship when that happened. I think I more went into explaining how problematic that was. You know, now probably I would be quicker to leave if that. I mean, I don't think I'd ever get to that point at this point. But if for some reason it happened, I would easily be like, yeah, I don't want any part of this.
Right,
You
right.
know?
I was
So
just surprised when it happened because it was just all it. Maybe it was something that was building up, but it's just one thing that just triggered me, and I'm like, this is not right. This does not feel good at all.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
foreign,
mm.
you
yeah,
know.
And I had that experience when I was a kid. So again, I'm grateful that I had the experience when I was like about 12
Mhm.
because it terrified me. And I
Mhm.
thought I never want to feel it kind of also fed my belief system of trying to be in control with things at the time.
Mhm.
But in all honesty, I just thought I never want to feel that way again because it did go past the boundary, and it was directed to my father and stuff that he was doing at the time. And obviously, I was like a pressure cooker. I had just taken so much and I'd had enough. And I forget exactly what the situation was, like what he actually said, but I was done. Like he'd sort of, come into my room. I had a little Donald Duck clock. What wasn't that little? It was about so big, and it was all metal. And I just picked up that clock and I knew I was doing it and I couldn't stop myself. And I hurled that clock at him as hard as I could. And I actually hit him on the head and he just hit the deck. And then I thought,
wow,
oh my God, I've killed him. And
wow,
he was out. And I thought, as a young kid, I just thought he was bleeding from his head. And I thought, I have actually killed him. Like my life, even at that age, was starting to pass by me. But I remember the feeling only too well. And I'm like, I never want to feel ever, ever like that again.
yeah, interesting.
Clearly, he wasn't dead, just to be clear.
That is very, very interesting. Yeah, and as far as where I learned relationships, I think I'm now gonna round out the pattern that we've all expressed so far. It was all about what I didn't want,
Mm,
because I never saw an example of a healthy relationship. My mother and father got divorced when I think I was like 3 or 4, so I have no recollection of them being together at all. Right, and then she remarried when I was 7 to a man that I didn't like, and um, no matter, I mean, he was in my life for 27 years, and I never took a liking to the guy, and
wow.
I was a people watcher my whole life. I learned a lot of what I learned just from observing people, and watching their relationship was really frustrating for me. Like, I didn't understand what these two people were doing. I mean, I think I know what my mother was doing. We lived in the ghetto, and he dragged her out of that, and I just happened to be there, so I went along for the ride. But there was really no part of that I looked at as like, oh, this is a healthy relationship. So, and I think that's a more challenging way to have to go through life, because it's easy when you have a template, right? Like, you just do what mom and dad did, or whatever. And I didn't have that at all. So I took my cues from what I noticed in the world, what I saw on television, what I saw on in films. Films have a big role in educating me in my life. Like things that I saw whenever I watched a film, I would be like, oh, is that how you do that? Or, oh, don't do that, that kind of thing. And even with all that, luckily, I think what changed for me, I think sort of became or sort of came from the idea of what Shakespeare put forth in Hamlet when he said, "To thine own self be true." You know, that's where it started to change for me, where I figured out that if I was going to be effective in a relationship and contribute to the relationship, that I always had to start with contributing to myself first. And what's funny is some people will hear that and think that that's selfish, and I go, no. The thing is that I want to contribute to my significant other, and just anyone in my life, any relationship that I have in my life. I want to be a force for positivity and for encouragement and for love and affection. So if my well is empty, I can't fill anybody else's well, right? So this idea that I prioritize myself, while some people might consider that selfish, I consider it a public service, because if I don't take care of myself first, I'm going to be a problem.
And selfish is not a dirty word.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the literal definition is I call it self-prioritizing. That's
I mean, maybe the literal definition is FJ, but I think it's more about people when they're self-absorbed. You know, when they're self-absorbed, that can be really negative and toxic. But I actually think, healthy selfishness is just a paramount part of us, our relationship to ourselves and to everybody external of us, including our intimate relationships. So anyone that's in the ripples of the pond.
Yeah, I agree. Well, good stuff, ladies. I sincerely appreciate the time that you've contributed to this. It's been fantastic for me. And I'll end with a joke from Jim Jeffries that you just triggered by what you said. He said, I had a relationship end because I wanted to move to the United States and pursue my stand-up comedy career, and she wanted to stay in England and have sex with other men.